4. 1. Go to your room, Sandra. He ordered Sandra to go to her room. 2. No, I won't go. He refused to go. 3.
Shall I open the window?
She offered to open the window. 4. Will you all come to my party? He invited us to come to his party. 5.
We haven't got any money.
They complained that they didn't have any money. 6. I didn't do it. He insisted that he didn't do it. Track 2.5.
Welcome to the program. This week we're looking at protests and demonstrations with Don Green, our expert in Oxford. There have been many important protests around the world over the last century. The Women's March for Equality in 1913, the March on Washington in 1963, when Martin Luther King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech, and the demonstrations in Germany that led to the Berlin Wall coming down in 1989. Don, all of these protests have had a big impact on history. How many people does it take to make a difference?
That's a very good question. Actually, there isn't a direct connection with the size of the protest and the effect it has.
Can you give us an example?
Well, the Women's March in 1913 had only 8,000 marchers. The effect of the march wasn't immediate, but it was eventually successful, and women gained the right to vote in 1920.
And how about the protests in Germany?
Amazingly, the first time people met in 1982, there were only a dozen, but the number grew to 1,000 quite quickly, and eventually, in 1989, it became a very significant demonstration of 300,000.
So would you say protests take time?
Indeed. Change doesn't come overnight.
Is the March on Washington a good example?
Yes. The march was made up of a very large group of protesters, around 200,000. This was in 1963. It took a year for the march to have any effect.
And what was the effect?
The government passed a law that protects people, black and white, against discrimination.
So time is a factor as well as size.
That's right. But we have to mention one demonstration that happened more recently, the anti-war protests in 2003. Protests took place in 600 cities around the world, and at least 6 million people took part.
6 million?
At least. Possibly 30. No one is really sure. There were over 1 million protesters at the demonstration in London alone. The biggest protest march in Britain's entire history.
And what was the effect?
Nothing. The governments at the time chose to go ahead with their plans, and the demonstrations were virtually forgotten.
So size doesn't always matter.
Not necessarily, as those millions of people discovered a year later.